Hey guys, welcome to Factoring of Trinomials Leading Coefficient 1. So first of all, I want to talk about what a leading coefficient is, and then I want to talk about what factoring is, and then I'm going to show you how to do it. So that's what we're doing today. So first of all, a coefficient is the number in front of the variable. This is just a number. It's not a coefficient because there's no variable. So the coefficient is the number in front of the variable. So in this case, 14 would be a coefficient, 5 would be a coefficient, 8 would be a coefficient. The leading coefficient is the number in front of the first variable that's leading, right? And this is almost always in reference to a polynomial that's in order such that the first variable is the one with the highest power. So we've talked about how we figure out the degree of the polynomial by looking at the variable with the highest power. So when we're talking about leading coefficient, we want the variable with the highest power to be first, so that the leading coefficient is the coefficient of the variable with the highest power. Hopefully that makes sense. So here it looks like we don't have a leading coefficient, right? It's just blank, but we know that when it's blank, that's an invisible one, right? So this is a leading coefficient of 1. So all of these have a leading coefficient of 1. And that makes what we're about to do, factoring, right? That makes it easier. So I'm starting you out with leading coefficient being 1. This entire worksheet, the leading coefficient is 1. And then in the next worksheet, we'll be doing the same thing, but with different leading coefficients. So then I'll be teaching you how to deal with it when the leading coefficient is not 1, okay? So that's kind of the deal here. So now let's talk about factoring. So factoring is kind of the opposite of distributing, okay? So you can think of it as the inverse of distributing. So when we distribute, we're multiplying things out. So factoring is the opposite of that. So we've talked about factoring out the GCF, or greatest common factor, and we ended up with, at the end, our answer was two things being multiplied together. So that's going to be true here too. Our answer is going to be two things multiplied together. So let's look at that. So our answer is going to look like x plus something. So I'm just going to write an example. Right? This is not a solution to any one of these necessarily. I'm just writing an example of what this would look like. So this is what our answer is going to look like. So remember, we multiplied these, right? And we multiplied each one, and then we multiplied each one. So now we're going the opposite direction. Instead of starting with this and multiplying, we're starting with a trinomial, and we're going to this. Okay, so this is the format that our answer is going to be in. Again, this is not an answer to any one of these. I just made up these numbers. But this is the format that our answer is going to be in. So that in mind, let's go ahead and start doing that. So when we multiplied these out, right, our first term was, we multiplied the first terms together. So in this case, that would be x squared, right? That would be x squared. And then the last term, we're multiplying these together. So something we already know, the easiest thing to know when we're looking at how are these going to factor is that these two numbers have to multiply to this last number. So we're looking for numbers that multiply to 48. We're looking for numbers that multiply to 48. So the best thing to do is to just list out your numbers that multiply to 48. So let's do that. What are numbers that multiply to 48? Well, that would be 1 and 48. This is one that people often forget because it's kind of obvious, and so people don't really think about it. So it really sneaks up on people. So make sure you remember this one. There's always going to be 1 and the original number always multiply to the original number, right? So this is always an option. So don't forget this one. Also, so the next one would be 2 and 24 multiply to 48. 4 and 12. 8 and 6, or 6 and 8, I guess, if I'm going in order. So these are the things that multiply to 48. These are the ways we can multiply two numbers to get 48. So now let's talk about the next step of how we figure out which one of these we're using. So we know that our middle term, to get our middle term, we did first term times the last term. So in this case, so for this example that I'm doing here, we would have done plus 2x, and then plus x, and then plus 2, right? So here we have this term plus this term, and we can combine those to make 3x, right? So whatever because our coefficients are 1, this middle term is always going to be this term plus this term, because we don't have anything out in front here. So it's going to be this term plus this term, which is 3. So for here, we're looking for which one of these factors of 48 add to 14. So what factors of 48 add to 14? So that would be 8 and 6, right? 8 and 6 add to 14. So our answer here, I'm going to change colors real quick. Our answer here is x plus 8 and x plus 6. So if we multiplied this back out, right? If I multiplied this back out, I would be back here. So this is the factored form of this. Their equivalent is just a different form. This is factored form. This is the factored form of this. So let's do some more examples of this. Hold on one second. All right, so because this video is already a little bit long, I'm going to stop here and I'm going to do the next example in the next video. So I will see you there.